I can't underscore enough how financially disruptive a storm is for families. We looked at those million families, and what we observed is that when we look at their checking accounts, their regular bank account, inflows, meaning income, was down by 20% in the week of the landfall, spending down by 30%. So these are very big numbers. That's almost like an economic recession happening the week of the landfall.
And then if you go out a couple of months, you see that it's hard to make debt payments. So so those drop. Even healthcare spending is affected. Can you go into that and explain what happens exactly?
Yeah, as soon as that storm hits, the category of spending that we saw drop the most was healthcare spending. It dropped by 50%. Wow. And, that could be, doctors' offices are closed, people aren't going to the doctor, they're missing appointments. But surprisingly, even 3 months out, people had not caught up on that healthcare spending. It was still down by 5%. On debt payments, that was another area where we saw big drops, about 15% drops in debt payments across mortgage, auto, credit cards, student loans. And again, 3 months out, people had not caught up on those debt payments.
You go 6 months and 12 months?
Yeah, we didn't look out that far, and I think it's important to underscore that, what we're observing is sort of what's going on in that bank account, but obviously families will be experiencing long aftermath in terms of the damage to their cars, their homes, et cetera.
When we look at it, we try to look at the macro impact, and we always see that near term it can hurt GDP, it can hurt growth, it can have a negative impact on the overall GDP of a nation. But then it seems like the rebuilding, you get it back and then some. Was that indicative? Could you see it in this study, or? Well,
I think you're right. There is a big economic impact. I mean, we saw consumer spending down by over 7% in Houston year over year in August of last year. Cash flows and financial transaction, the level of economic activity does return. It does come back. But there are important winners and losers in this. I mean, on the small businesses side, we saw that it was construction firms, it was repair and maintenance firms that were actually doing better than baseline. But small firms like healthcare firms, we saw that consumer spending on healthcare was down, and those were precisely the firms that hadn't really caught up. So there are important winners and losers, and households also, they're spending less on healthcare, they're slowing down their debt payments. But in Houston, 3 months out, families had spent 33% more on home repair, 13% more on auto repair. So that's tough to swallow as a financial shock for a household. But of course, if you happen to work in those industries, you might be earning a bigger paycheck because of it.
Fiona, if you're watching people's bank accounts, did you notice along the way, obviously you saw debt payments down, did you notice if direct deposits coming from people's employers, were those down as well? Are there a lot of people who just stopped getting paid, especially if you work for a small business?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in that first week, we did see a bit of a dip in even payroll. So even if you're getting paid direct deposit, it may be that you're working fewer hours during that storm. But it was a lot of transfers and other deposits, transactions that people might be putting in via the ATM or by check. That's where we saw big drops in those inflows and that income.